While computing routes table, we may face some difficulties, right? And generally, we classify the problems, the difficulties, into two groups. The first one, often we call difficulty number one, and the second kind of difficulty or second kind of problem is generally known as difficulty number two, right? So, in the last class, also we discussed what is difficulty number one. Have you discussed difficulty number one in your class?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, what was the nature of the difficulty? You see, the nature of the difficulty was in a row, the first element is zero, but the row contains or the row did contain some other non-zero terms, right? That was the nature of the difficulty. That was the nature of the problem. And if we face such a kind of a problem, then we'll solve the problem or will compute routes table by replacing zero by a very small number, positive number, which is epsilon. And we have discussed the process. Okay. Now, before discussing the second kind of difficulty, let's try to compute routes table for this system having a characteristic equation qs is equal to s to the power 6 plus 2s to the power 5 plus 8s to the power 4, 12s cube. Can you see the characteristic equation?
Yes, ma'am.
So try to compute routes table or routes array. Do it. Yes. Yes. What is your finding?
Ma'am, at s to the power s cube, the both term is zero. Is coming.
So if we try to compute the routes table for this particular system having this characteristic equation, naturally it's a sixth order system. So the first row will correspond to s to the power 6 terms and the elements are 1, 8, 20 and 16. And s to the power 5, that particular row will contain terms in this particular sequence 2, 12 and 16. Now, if we proceed for computing the terms of other rows, then though it's not really legible, but um, what we see that this particular row, that means S cube row is containing all zero terms. Am I correct? Please look
Yes,
at
ma'am.
your table. So that means not only the first term of this particular row is 0, this particular row does not contain any other non-zero term. Is it clear? What is the difference between first kind of problem and second type of problem? So in this case, a row will contain all zero terms. Have you understood what is the difference between these two type of problems? Is it clear? Please respond.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is difficulty number 2, right? So if we, while computing Raoult's table, if we face this problem that yes, a row is containing all zero terms, that means the system will have symmetrically placed roots on the S plane. So if we face or if we come across this situation, that means the system will certainly have symmetrically placed roots on the S plane. Um, just a moment. Okay, only we'll consider this axis. We'll consider the S plane, and please follow the cursor. So symmetrically placed roots means the roots could be real with negative sign. That means two roots at plus minus sigma. One in the left half of the S plane, the other one in the right half of the S plane. Can you follow the cursor?
Yes, ma'am.
Or complex conjugate root pair on imaginary axis, like this. Okay? Or complex conjugate roots forming a quadrate. Quadrate means complex conjugate root pair like this and complex conjugate root pair like this. Okay, so that means four complex conjugate roots forming a quadrate or any combination of this. So these are the roots or nature of the roots which are symmetrically placed on the S plane. So if we come across a zero which contains all zero terms, that means the system will have symmetrically placed roots on the S plane. Now, so this is the row which contains all zero terms, and this is the row corresponding to S cube terms. So the row just above the row containing all zero terms. Now we'll focus on that particular row and we'll. So this is our row. This is the row of importance, right? And will form a polynomial using the elements of the row which is just above the row containing all zero terms. So what are the elements in this particular case? The elements are 1, 6 and 8, and this row corresponds to a term s to the power 4. So the first term of the polynomial will be 1 into s to the power 4, right? Then alternate terms, the second term of the polynomial will be plus 6 into s square, right? And the third term will be 8 into s to the power 0. Again, I repeat, 1 into s to the power 4 plus 6 into s square plus 8 into s to the power 0. So this is our polynomial, and we call this polynomial the auxiliary polynomial. Clear?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
now,
Yes,
if
ma'am.
so, AS in this for this particular example, AS is our auxiliary polynomial, and if we equate this polynomial to 0, then naturally we'll get auxiliary equation. So this is our auxiliary equation. S to the power 4 plus 6s square plus 8 is equal to 0. Now, the roots of the auxiliary equations are also the roots of the characteristic equation of the system. Here, so in this case, we see that the order of the auxiliary equation is 4, and the order of the characteristic equation QS is 6. That means if we solve this auxiliary equation, we'll get 4 roots of the auxiliary equation. Agree?
Yes, ma'am.
Those 4 roots are also the roots of the characteristic equation. So by solving this auxiliary auxiliary equation, we have obtained 4 roots of the characteristic equation, and if we divide QS by A's, then we'll get the second order polynomial, and if we equate that to 0, and if we solve that equation, then we'll be able to find out the locations of the rest 2 roots of the characteristic equation on the S plane. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the roots of the auxiliary equation are the roots of the characteristic equation which are symmetrically placed on the S plane. So if you solve the auxiliary equation, then we'll get the roots of the characteristic equation which are symmetrically placed on the S plane. So far, this is okay, but the question is how to ascertain the stability of the system, whether the system is unstable or whether the system is limitedly stable. One thing is clear, you see, since if we come across this particular situation, we know that the roots will be symmetrically placed on the S plane. So real roots with opposite signs or complex conjugate root pair forming quadrates, or a complex conjugate root pair on imaginary axis that we have already discussed here.
Yes, ma'am.
So from that conclusion, it is clear that if we face this situation, the system cannot be an absolutely and asymptotically stable one, right? Either some of the roots will lie in the right half of the S plane, or some of the roots will lie on the imaginary axis. Even if I assume that the roots are appearing on the imaginary axis only, no roots are there in the right half of the S plane, right? So in that case also, the system cannot be an asymptotically and absolutely stable one. At best, the system could be a limitedly stable or marginally stable one. Okay? But the problem is, unless we complete route stable, we are not in a position to find out whether the roots are on the imaginary axis or some of the roots are uh, there in the right half of the S plane. Do you get my point?
Yes, ma'am.
So we'll have to complete the computation of route stable. How to do that? Now, this is our auxiliary polynomial. Already we have discussed. So now we'll take first derivative of the auxiliary polynomial with respect to S. That means we'll perform an operation which is DAS by DS. So since it's a fourth order polynomial, so if we take the first derivative, we'll get a third order polynomial, and we can generalize this findings. So we'll get a third order polynomial in this case, and the coefficients will be, and the polynomial will be 4s cube plus 12s. Okay. Clear? Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I have a question regarding the solution of this problem.
Yes.
Ma'am, here we are using the coefficients of the first derivative of the polynomial, correct?
I have not used the coefficients of the first derivative of the polynomial yet.
Oh,
Only
alright, alright.
I have taken the first derivative of the auxiliary polynomial. Now, to complete the computation of Raoult's table, we'll replace the zeros by the coefficients of the polynomial, which is the result of the first derivative of the auxiliary polynomial with respect to s. That means in place of this 0, we'll put 4 because this is 4s cubed. So we'll put 4, and in place of this 0, we'll put 12. Now, what is your question?
Yeah, ma'am. If we are substituting those coefficients of the first derivative of the polynomial here. Suppose here we have only the degree of the polynomial as 6, s to the power 6, as we have degree 6. Suppose we have a higher degree polynomial, and suppose we get a all row 0 in the middle, and we also use the coefficients of that first derivative, suppose, and if we get a second time that, then what we will do?
I don't get your question.
Ma'am, I am asking that.
It's such a
Uh,
long question, I couldn't follow. Sorry. Please
ma-
repeat.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, here we have the third row all 0, correct?
Mhm.
And we are using the coefficient of the derivative of the polynomial for polynomial from the fourth row.
Yes, the row, just we can put it in a generalized form, generic form, that
Okay, ma'am.
the row up just above the row containing all 0 terms. Yes.
Yes. And then the third row. I mean that problem is avoided, correct? If
Yes.
suppose I mean we have here only degree of the polynomial as 6, but suppose in a higher order degree polynomial this
Mhm.
problem comes for one, suppose, then we do the same procedure, but after substituting that
So you
polynomial
want to say that if we face this
in
kind
a
of, by
later stage,
computing
this,
Raoult's
yeah, yeah,
table, if you face this kind of problem, say
in a
twice,
later
not
stage,
thrice,
yes, yes,
twice, that is your question, right?
yes,
So we'll follow the same procedure.
I mean that first derivative of that
Yes.
previous previous degree,
We'll
previous row.
start computing Raoult's table. First, by eliminating all this zeros by the coefficients of the first derivative of the auxiliary polynomial, this auxiliary polynomial, say a1 is. And in the later stage, if we again find this kind of problem, then again we'll form another auxiliary polynomial using the coefficients of the row containing uh, just above the row containing all 0 terms. Let's call it A2S. I guess this is your question, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So we'll take first derivative of A1 is, we'll replace this 0, then we'll proceed. Again, if the same condition happens, then we'll form A2S, we'll take the first derivative of A2S, A2S, ds, and we'll replace those zeros by the coefficients of A2S, ds, and again we'll proceed.
All right, ma'am. That was my confusion. I mean, would we be using that first derivative only? That was my question. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, only first derivative. Otherwise, you won't be able to substitute this 0. Why? Because this is a fourth order. Just suppose this is a 2n row. This row will be 2n minus 1. 2n minus 1. One thing, just try.
And ma'am, why are we using this first derivative here?
What?
I mean, we are using this first derivative
Hmm.
That's not a problem. I mean, my question is why we are using. I mean, how we are using this first derivative.
How?
I want to know the logic. Yeah, yeah.
The detailed derivation is beyond the scope of this class.
All
The
right. Okay,
detailed
ma'am.
derivation of Routh-Hurwitz's criteria cannot be discussed in this class. But one thing you try to understand intuitively, if I want to replace these two zeros appearing in this row containing corresponding to s cube term, right? Hmm. Then I'll have to take the first derivative of this fourth order polynomial. If only I take the first derivative of the fourth order polynomial, then only I'll get a third order polynomial,
Yes,
right?
that
And
that's correct.
if I get a third order polynomial, then only I can replace the zeros of this s cube row. If I want to replace this zero terms of s cube row, I need a third order polynomial. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, ma'am.
Hmm? So
Yeah,
that's why
ma'am.
we are taking the first derivative. If you take a second derivative, then it will be again you take a derivative, it will be a polynomial of second order. So it will be of no use to us. Just try to understand intuitively.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am. Here we. Okay, okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Now, another thing, please note that, as I said, if we come across the situation, that means the system will have symmetrically placed roots. That means the system will have, if the auxiliary, or rather, the symmetrically placed roots are the roots of the auxiliary equation, right? So the order of the auxiliary equation will have to be even. Clear? All of you, have you understood what I'm saying? Can you follow what I'm saying? The order of the auxiliary polynomial, since the roots of the auxiliary polynomial will give us the locations of the symmetrically placed roots on the S plane. Hence, always the order of the auxiliary polynomial should be even. Do you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
That's why I was trying to generalize. That is, this row suppose corresponds to a term which is s to the power 2n, and the row containing all zero terms, in a generic way, we can say that the row containing all zero terms will correspond to a term which is s to the power 2n minus 1. N is any integer, so s to the power 2n will be always even, and s to the power 2n minus 1 will always be odd. Am I correct? Can you follow this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have substituted the zeros by these two terms 4 and 12. So now we can compute the rest of the table, and if you proceed, then probably we'll get these terms, or I guess they have divided this row by 2. Anyway, I'm just ignoring that factor. So just look at the terms appearing in the first column of Routh array. So these are the term 1, 1, 1, 4, 1, 3, 1 third, 8. And please look at the terms you got, that you got, right? And we find that all the terms appearing in the first column of Routh array are positive. What about your cases? Is this observation true for your cases as well?
Yes, ma'am.
So all the terms appearing in the first column of Routh array are positive. No sign changes there. So our obvious conclusion is no root of the characteristic equation will lie in the right half of the S-plane. Clear? Had there been a sign change or two sign changes, then we could have decided that yes, there is or there are certain roots in the right half of the S plane. But in this case, you see all the terms are positive, and hence our conclusion is the no root will lie in the right half of the S plane. So, what could be the nature of the symmetrically placed roots of the characteristic equation on the S plane? The roots can only appear on the imaginary axis, isn't it? As complex conjugate pair. Do you agree? Do you
Yes,
agree?
yes, ma'am.
Is the reason clear to everyone?
Ma'am, is this Rao theory correct?
This
I
one?
mean, ma'am, yes, ma'am. I mean, you told last day. I mean, you told last day that the data in the first column in sorry in the data in the first row and last column should always match with the data in the
You
last row
complete your,
first
you
column.
come. I don't know whether it's correct or not.
No, no, I mean, you see, ma'am,
You,
in
you,
the data in the first row last column is 16, but the data in the last row first column is 8. They must match always.
I don't get you.
I mean, the data in the first row last column. I mean, here it is 16.
Hmm.
And the data in the last row first column it is 8. They must match always.
Oh, just apply your common sense. You just look at your own routes table.
Oh,
Here they have divided this row by 2. That's
of course, of
why
course.
AN has become 8.
Sorry, ma'am.
Just look at your own routes table. So that is our conclusion now. So we have intuitively we have concluded that only symmetrically roots can appear on the imaginary axis as conjugate root pair. Now, how to validate that fact and how to find out the locations of those roots? So, as I said, it's the auxiliary polynomial is a fourth order one, hence we'll get 4 roots, right? So we can solve this auxiliary equation for finding out the locations of the roots which are symmetrically placed on the S plane. Please solve this equation and find whether the root locations are given by this or not. Do it fast. Done.
Yes, ma'am. Done.
Okay, so these are the root locations. So we
Yes,
find that yes, 2 pairs of roots are there on the imaginary axis and no roots are there of the characteristic equation or auxiliary equation is there in the right half of the S plane. So, what is the conclusion about the stability of the system? The system is
Unstable.
limitedly stable, not unstable. No root is there in the right half of the S plane, right? So the only two pairs of roots on the imaginary axis, but they are not
Ma'am, repeat.
repeated. No, they are not repeated. One is at plus minus j root 2. The
Yes,
other
yes, yes.
one is at plus minus j2. Look at this roots, right? So these two are these are not the repeated roots. Here, okay. So because of this uh, root pairs, which are non-repeated in nature, but on the imaginary axis, obviously, the system will be limitedly stable or marginally stable. So the conclusion has been drawn over here. Therefore, the system under consideration is limitedly stable. So if we face this kind of situations, this kind of problem, then yes, we'll have to form the auxiliary polynomial. Then from the auxiliary polynomial, we'll have to take the first derivative of auxiliary polynomial. And as we discussed, in this way, we can solve this particular problem, right? So here, if you substitute once epsilon 1 over here and 1 epsilon 2 over here, no, your computation will be incorrect and your findings will be incorrect, right? So while solving a problem, please try to judge what is the nature of the difficulty, what is the nature of the difficulty, and accordingly apply the solution technique. Now, route stability criterion can also be used for design purpose. So application of route stability criterion to linear feedback systems. So for that, let us consider a system, a unity feedback system. Please draw this block diagram as the diagram is not very clearly legible. So the input to this summer is small rs, which is the reference input, and the other input to the summer is the controlled output cs, which is fed back to this summer, and we are using negative feedback. So put a minus sign over here and a plus sign over here. Now the difference signal is our error signal or actuating signal, and the forward path transfer function gs is k by s into this one is s square plus s, yes, this is s square plus s plus 1 whole multiplied by s plus 4. Are you drawing this block diagram?
Yeah, ma'am, it's done.
Done? Okay. Now you see, we have not specified any particular value of this gain k. Let's call it forward path gain k. Actually, this is one design parameter because we can tune this value, tune the forward path gain. This is the easiest way to improve the system performance. And I guess you know that if we increase the forward path gain of a unity feedback system or a feedback system, closed loop system, then what happens? The system response becomes faster. So if you want to improve the speed of response of the system, then often, and if the speed of response of the system is not up to the mark, not satisfactory, then we can tune this variable parameter or we can tune this variable gain k, and accordingly we can have an acceptable uh, speed of response for a given system, right? But there is another problem. If you go on, that is the advantage, and if you go on increasing k, then it might so happen that at a particular point the system will become unstable, right? So we cannot go on increasing the value of the variable or tuning parameter k uh, as per our wish. We cannot go on increasing the value of this parameter up to infinity. It's not possible, as I said, because after a while, after a certain value of this particular parameter gain k, the system will start behaving like an unstable one. Okay. So what is the range of gain k? Because even if you want to tune the this variable parameter, you'll have to know what is the range of gain k for which the system is stable. So is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So to find out the range of gain k for which the system is stable, we can apply Raoult's stability criterion, right? So this is the one unity feedback system. Here could be a block which is HS, but HS has to be specified. So from this configuration is given. So from this we can find out the closed loop transfer function of the system, that is Cs by Rs, closed loop transfer function of the system. And from the closed loop transfer function of the system, we can find out the characteristic equation of this particular system. Clear? Because we know that for applying Raoult stability criterion, we'll have to know the characteristic equation of the system. So, given such a system, our first task is to obtain the closed loop transfer function like this, and from the closed loop transfer function, we'll have to write down the characteristic equation of the system. So, what is the characteristic equation of the system? This is the closed loop transfer function, and hence the characteristic equation will be s into s square plus s plus 1 whole multiplied by s plus 4 plus k equal to 0. That is our characteristic equation. Agree?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we'll apply Raoult stability criterion. And since one variable parameter or unknown parameter k is appearing in the characteristic equation, so it's obvious that some of the terms of the Raoult stable will be function of k. So this is a fourth order system. So s to the power 4, the elements of this row will be 1, 5 and k. And s cube, the elements will be 5 and 4. Now you compute the Raoult stable. Have you computed Raoult stable?
Done, ma'am.
Okay. So these are the term in the first column of appearing in the first column of route array. 1, 5, 21 by 5. The next term uh, is really a function of k, that is 84 by 5 minus 5k whole divided by 21 by 5, and the S0 term contains an element which is k. Right? So for a system to be stable, we want to find out the range of gain k for which the system is stable, right? So for the system to be stable, we know that all these terms appearing in the first column of route array should be positive. That means k should be greater than 0. That is the first condition. K should be greater than 0, right? Similarly, if you look at this term, that means 84 by 5 minus 5k. This term should also be greater than 0, or in other words, since a0 is positive, hence this term should also be 0. Do you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So from these two equations, for this particular example, from these two equations, we can find out the range of gain k for which the system will remain stable, and the range of gain k is k should be greater than 0 and should be less than 84 by 25. Okay. Now in the
Yes, ma'am.
limiting case, see, if the value of k is equal to 84 by 25, then what will happen to the route table? If the value of gain k is equal to 84 by 25, then
There
what
will be
will happen?
row 0.
Which row will contain all 0 terms?
Yes. In one order of 1.
S1. So
Hmm.
this S row will contain all 0 terms because this is 0 and there are no other terms which are non-zero, right? So now we can form the auxiliary equation taking the elements of this particular row. So our auxiliary equations, or we can say that since this row is containing all 0 terms, that means the system in the limiting condition will have symmetrically placed roots. Okay. So we can form the auxiliary equation taking the elements of the row just above the row containing all 0 terms as the coefficients, and our auxiliary equations in this case will be 21 by 5 s square plus 84 by 25 equal to 0. This is our auxiliary equation. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So in the limiting condition, when the system will be limitedly stable, as we have set the value of gain k to be equal to 84 by 25 and we have not exceeded this particular value, so we can say that no roots will be there in the right half of the S plane, because if k is greater than this value, then this term will be negative, otherwise it will be 0. So it's apparent that two complex conjugate root pair will appear on the imaginary axis, and we can find out the locations of those roots by solving this auxiliary polynomial. And if we solve this auxiliary polynomial, we'll find that the roots are located at plus minus j root over 4 by 5. Right? So this can be written as plus minus j omega 0. What is omega 0? Omega 0 is the frequency of the sustained oscillation. Since the system is now limitedly stable, hence the system will exhibit sustained oscillation at its output. Right? And what is the frequency of that sustained oscillation? The frequency of that sustained oscillation is root over 4 by 5 radian per second. Please check whether you have understood this or not. Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
So now let's discuss Harvard stability criteria. Now, as I said, application of route stability criterion is much more simple than that of Harvard stability criterion. Why? That we'll be able to understand when we discuss Harvard stability criterion. So Harvard stability criterion, this is our characteristic equation. We are quite familiar with this form. So Qs is equal to A0 is to the power n plus A1 is to the power n minus 1 dot 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 an minus 1 s plus an is equal to 0. And without any loss of generality, we are assuming A0 is greater than 0. Now, Harvard stability criterion states that for a system to be stable, it is necessary and sufficient that n, what is n? N is the order of this characteristic equation. So it is necessary and sufficient that when that is missing, necessary and sufficient that the n determinants formed using the coefficients a0, a1, an of the characteristic equation be positive, or to put it in a general form, n determinants formed using the coefficient a0, a1, an of the characteristic equation should bear the same sign. And here, since we have assumed a0 to be positive, a0 is positive, hence the statement can be made in this form that all the coefficients, all this n number of determinants should be positive. Now, how to form these determinants? It is also stated in the stability criterion. This n number of determinants are taken as the principal minors of the following arrangement. And the following arrangement is one n by n determinant, which is also called Harvard's determinant, right? So this is our Harvard's determinant, and it's denoted as delta n. So nth order n by n determinant, delta n. And how to form this Harvard's determinant? You see, n number of rows and n number of columns. In the first row, the first element should be A1. So here, the first element will be A1, and the second element of first row will be A0. A1, A0, right? So when we'll start the second row, the first element will be not at A2. We'll skip A2 and we'll pick up the alternate term, which is A3. And the rest of the terms will be A3, then A2, then A1, then A0. Clear? So let us look at this Harvard's determinant. You see, the first row contains the terms in this particular sequence, in this order. The first term is A1, the second term is A0. So if I proceed in this manner, then this term, the coefficient of this term will be A minus 1. Instead of 0, I can write A minus 1. The next term will be A minus 2, so on and so forth. Have you understood this? Yes or no? Please respond.
Ma'am, can you explain the last part again?
The last part. So instead of writing it as 0, now for the timing, I can write it. If I follow this pattern, if I follow this practice, then the first term is A1, the second term is A0, then the third term of this row will be A minus 1. 1 এর পরে 0 আসে, 0 এর পরে minus 1 আসে. Right?
Yeah.
And the next term will be A minus 2 and so on and so forth.
Yes, ma'am. And they are all considered as zeros.
Yes, I'll come to that. Now the second row will start with the coefficient A3. The second term is A2, then A1, then A0, then this one is again A minus 1, so on and so forth. Right? The third row will start from A5, the coefficient A5, A5, A4, A3, A2, A1, A0. So there is also a pattern. So very easily you can form Harvard's determinant. And the last term for the nth row, what will be the first element? For the nth row, what will be the first element? What will be the index of the first element?
A2n minus 1 according to
Yes.
sequence.
Yes, A to n minus 1, as you can see, A to n minus 2, A to n minus 3, and obviously the nth term will be An. Is this correct? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
A. Okay. Now, so all the coefficients with negative indices or indices larger than n will be considered to be 0. Right? So likewise, A minus 1 will be 0, A minus 2 will be 0. In this case, you see A2n minus 1, that is greater than n. So that this term will be 0, this term will be 0, this term will be 0. A n plus 1, this term will also be 0. Only this term n will remain present. So again, I repeat, all the coefficients with indices larger than n or with negative indices are considered to be 0. Here, now we'll from this Harvard's determinant, which is n by n, the order of which is n by n, now we'll have to form the rest n minus 1 number of determinants. N minus 1 number of determinants. So first we'll form the first determinant of the order 1, that is delta 1. So delta 1. And how to select the coefficients from this Harvard's determinant? All the determinants are taken as the principal minus. Principal minus means all the determinants will have the same diagonal elements. Okay. So these are the diagonal elements of the Harvard's determinant, A1, A2, A3, and then N. These are the diagonal elements. So the first determinant, delta 1, will consist of one single element, which is A1. So delta 1 is equal to A1, right? Now delta 2, 2 by 2 determinant, delta 2, it will be A1, A0, and in the next row, in the second row, the elements will be A3 and A2. A3 and A2. This is delta 2. Delta 3, A1, A0, 0, A3, A2, A1, A5, A4, A3. So in this way, we can proceed and we can form the rest n minus 1 number of determinants, n minus 1 number of determinants, and for the system to be stable, all these determinants, delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, delta 4, delta n, all these determinants should have the same sign, or again, if A0 is greater than 0, then all these determinants should be greater than 0. Clear? And again, it's the derivation is beyond the scope of the syllabus. So in case of Harvard stability criterion or in Harvard's method, if we find that delta n minus 1, you can write it down because this is not legible properly. Delta n minus 1 is equal to 0. Then the system will be limitedly stable. So this is our Harvard stability criterion. Now the problem with Harvard stability criterion is that um, for higher order systems, suppose if it's a 7th order system, then you'll have to solve even a 7 by 7 order determinant, which is really time consuming, and it's really difficult to compute such a higher order determinant, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
And already we have applied, you see, already we have applied route stability criterion for a 6th order system. So it's very easily you can appreciate the fact that we can apply route stability criterion with ease for even 7th order, 8th order, 9th order system as well. Okay, only the length of the table will be table will increase only. Now let's solve one example. You can solve it right now. You don't have to solve, but you can check for the values. So let's consider a 4th order system, S to the power 4 plus 8s cube plus 18a square plus 16s plus 5. So first of all, we'll have to form the Harvard's determinant, which is in this case, which is a determinant having an order which is 4 by 4. So this is our Harvard's determinant, or delta 4. And the elements of the first row will be 8, then 1, 8, 1. The rest of the elements will be 0. The second row will contain terms A3, A2, A1, A0. That means 16, 18, 8, 1. in this particular sequence, in this particular order. The third row, this term will be 0, and the next term will be 5, then 16, then 18. So 5, 16, and 18, and A7. So all these terms are 0, and the last term is 5, which is AN. Right? So delta 1, one single element, which is equal to 8, and 8 is greater than 0. Delta 2, 8, 1, 16, 18. 8, 1, 16, 18, and if you solve for the determinant, value of the determinant, you will find that the value is 128, though I have not checked this value. 128, and it's greater than 0. And delta 3, again, delta 3 will be 8, 1, 0, 16, 18, 8, 0, 5, 16. And please do check that in all these determinants, the diagonal elements are remaining same. 8, in this particular determinant, the diagonal elements are 8 and 18, which are also the diagonal elements of the original determinant. And in this case, you see the diagonal elements are 8, 18, and 16, which are also the diagonal elements for this arrangement or Hurwitz arrangement. So this is the value of the determinant is probably this one. Okay. And delta 4 in this case, very easily we can find out delta 4. Why? Because delta 4 will be 5 into delta 3, isn't it? Yes or no? So after computing all the determinants, we find that the values of all the determinants are positive, and hence our conclusion is the system is stable. Therefore, the system under consideration is stable. Now, what is delta 2? Please write it down or compute it. What is delta 2? Delta 2 is A1 into A2 minus A0, A3. Yes or no? Please do respond.
Yes, ma'am.
So delta 2 is A1 into A2 minus A0 into A3. So our claim was, if we know Hurwitz stability criterion, then from Hurwitz stability criterion, we can derive Raoult stability criterion and vice versa. So we'll try to prove this. So this is delta 2. Fine. Now, for Raoult stability criterion, we are interested about the terms appearing in the first column of Raoult array. So A0 is positive, A1 is positive, that we know. That is the necessary condition. So B1, what about B1? You see B1 is A1 into A2 minus A0 into A3 by A1. And what is A1? A1 is delta 1. So B1 could be written as, you see, B1 is A1 into A2 minus A0 into A3 by A1. So this is delta 2 by delta 1. Do you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So if delta 2 and delta 1 are of same sign, that means B1 will be positive. So for a system to be stable, we know from Harvard stability criterion, delta 2 and delta 1 should bear the same sign. Or in other words, we can say that delta 2 and delta 1 both should be positive. That is the Harvard stability criterion. And applying this Harvard stability criterion, we find that in that case, B1 will also be positive. B1 will also be positive. That means the Raoult stability criterion is also being satisfied. Now, this is these are left for you as assignments. C1, you'll find that delta 3 by delta 2. If you proceed in this way, you'll find that C1 is delta 2 by delta 3 by delta 2, and D1 is equal to delta 4 by delta 3, and so on and so forth, right? So with this simple procedure, we can prove that the elements of the first column of the Raoult array can be interpreted in terms of Harvard's determinants in this manner. And if Harvard stability criterion is satisfied, then Raoult stability criterion will also be satisfied. Do you have any question? Do you have any question? So far, what we have discussed on these topics, do you have any doubt? Do you have any question?
No.
Okay, now let me come to the end of this chapter. Some salient points on Raoult Harvard stability criterion, some key points. I've noted down some key points and some key issues. These are the key points. Already we have discussed these points. And in the first class, I told you, you should know the definition of the dynamic system. Okay. So this is basically, it's 2 pages, around 2 pages, a self-study material. Already we have discussed all these things. Just I've summarized the key points. So please go through this. 1.9, more on Raoult stability criterion. Go through this section. I'm not going to discuss this in class. So only in case if you find any difficulty, then I'll discuss that particular point. And the references are my notes, my scribblings, etc. And obviously Nagrat and Gopal's book. Okay, so if you don't have anything, then should I close this file? Can I close this file?
Yes, ma'am.